Alright, so today we are going to start our Tempera paint color wheel. And the first thing that we're going to do is choose a shape for our color. So what you want to do is you're going to start with a 2-inch square, and I want you to draw some sort of shape. It can be anything you like. A heart, a star, just a paint splotch, a very organic, a leaf shape. Anything you can think of, but you're just going to do the outline of the shape. You won't do any details on the inside, and this is going to be your template that you trace. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a heart. So instead of drawing it, I'm going to cut it out so that it's symmetrical. So I'm going to fold my pattern in half, and I'm going to cut the heart shape out. And then you want to cut a fairly large shape from that square and just have a little bit of scrap left over. You don't want it too tiny. And then you're going to trace the shape onto a half sheet of white paper. You're going to trace it 12 times. So your shape, if it's large like mine, you're going to want to put them pretty close together. They're not going to touch or overlap, and they shouldn't run off the sides of the paper. But you are going to need to kind of cram them in there and do 3 rows of 4. So you want to get 4 across, and then do 2 more rows of 4 across so that you get a total of 12. So if I trace one, and if you accidentally you're tracing and you just put too much space between them and you need a second piece of paper, that's okay, you can have a second piece. But see if you can't get 12 onto one sheet. And take your time and neatly trace them, 12 total. So I have one here that's already finished, and this one's just kind of an organic, almost paint splotch. Here are some other ideas for shapes. Here's my paint splotch pattern. I did a star or kind of a diamond shape. The diamond's kind of small, but that's okay. So you get 12 on your paper. Don't forget, you need to write your name. That's very important. You don't want anybody to take your work and the day you have art. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And then you're ready to start painting with the liquid tempera. So you're going to get yourself a paint tray with the 6 colors, 3 primaries and 3 secondaries. And you don't want a full pump of each because you really do need just a tiny amount of paint to paint in these small spaces. You're going to need a water basin, a paintbrush, and you're going to need a sponge to dry your paintbrush off. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself situated here. And the first thing you want to do is have a nice dry paintbrush, so kind of pull it across the sponge, make sure it's dry, and just paint the colors as is and try and stay within your lines as much as possible. The lighter color paint, you'll be able to see your pencil lines through it, so if you go outside the shape a little bit, that's okay. The darker colors kind of cover that up. And when you are going to eventually cut these out, and when you do that, I want them to look the same. So really take your time and carefully paint these in. Paint them in solid and try your best to stay within the space, within the lines. Try not to go outside the lines, especially with the darker colors. Alright, now I'll rinse my paintbrush off, dry it off on the sponge, and you don't want to push it away from you and make it all spiky. You want a nice point, so you're going to pull it towards you. And then your next color. Now if you have a lot of water in your paintbrush, the colors will look a little bit like watercolor. They won't be dark, so that's why we dry our paintbrush off between colors. So I'm not going to make you watch me paint each one of these colors individually. But after you get all of them colored, you get a blue, a red, a yellow, you get an orange, a purple, and a green. Then you're ready to start mixing your intermediates on your plate. So when I start to mix my intermediates, I need blue to make a blue-green, and I need blue to make a blue-violet. So I don't want to use all my blue when I mix my first color. So I'm going to take a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the violet, not all of it because I need half of it at least for the remainder, the other 2 colors that I need to make, red, violet, and blue-green. So I'm going to mix this up with my paintbrush on my plate, and when I paint it, I want to make sure that it looks different than blue and it looks different than the violet. If it looks very similar, then I need to go back and remix it, maybe add a little bit more blue or a little bit more violet, on my mixing tray before I paint it. Didn't do a very good job there. Rinse your paintbrush off, dry it off. When you dry it on the sponge, if you get paint on the sponge, you know your paintbrush isn't rinsed off all the way. And then I need to make a little bit of blue-green. I won't use all my green because I need it for yellow-green later, so mix that up. I just need a small amount, so you don't want to mix a big, huge spot on your plate because you need space on your plate to make some other colors. And your plate isn't that big, but you don't have that much paint to start with. Honestly, one paintbrush full of paint will probably fill in your shape for you. You probably will not need to re-dip your paintbrush. These shapes are so tiny, they really do take a very small amount of paint. Okay, then I rinse my paintbrush off. Maybe now I would do red violet, and I'd mix all of my intermediates so that I have all 12 shapes painted in 12 different colors. Now I'm ready to start cutting them out. So this is why I wanted you to stay within your pencil lines, because the darker colors you really struggle to see those pencil lines, but on the lighter colors you can easily see them. So you're going to stay and cut right on your pencil lines, because I want each one of these 12 shapes to look like the shape it's meant to look like. I don't want them to each look a little bit different, or I don't want, for instance, this diamond to have a point missing, a corner of it missing because I didn't cut it out neatly. So very carefully cut your shapes out as neatly as possible, all 12. And as you cut them out, if you feel more comfortable flipping them over and on the back labeling them, like this one's red violet, this one is just violet, you could do that if you're worried about not knowing what color they're supposed to be. But it's not anything that you have to do. Take your time, cut them out as neatly as possible, and try to stay right on those pencil lines. So each shape you cut out should look very similar. Alright, so I have 12 that are already cut out for you, ready to go. And so now we need to arrange them in the color wheel order, and we're going to do that on a black circle. So you're going to get yourself a black piece of paper and a circle pattern. You're going to lay that circle pattern on the black paper, trace around it very carefully and neatly, and then you want to cut the circle out. And you have your nice circle. So now you're going to arrange them in the color wheel order. Your best bet first is to get your name on the back. Don't forget that. Your day. And then you want to fold your circle in half twice to get some creases to kind of help you to space out those colors properly. So now we have a T. So we know that 3 need to fit in each one of these sections. You have 12 colors, you have 4 sections, 3 into 12, or 4 into 12 is 3. So you can start with whatever colors you want. I'll put blue-green here, and then I'll go green, and then yellow-green, yellow. So I'll fit these 3. And I can put them right along the edge to hang off like I'm putting them, or if you want yours to fit right within the circle and not hang off, you could do that too. I like them hanging off, so I'm going to push them towards the edge. It also gives me a little bit more space to work around. So the first thing I want you to do is just arrange them on your color wheel in the correct order. Space them out equally, so I get 3 in this space, 3 in this quarter of space, 3 in this, and then finally these. So let's see, this is blue-violet, this is violet, and this is blue. So it goes like this. Alright, and I want you to evenly space them out. Take your time, space them out equally, and then you're going to glue them on very neatly. And I would say just kind of hold one up, tilt it up a little bit, put a dot of glue, maybe a little bit bigger, but a small dot of glue, hold it in place so that it stays, and then if you've arranged them neatly, you don't want to just push them all off and move them. You want to keep them in their spot and just very carefully each one tilt up, put a dot of glue, squish it down so that they don't move on you, so they stay equally spaced out. And you're going to do that all the way around. And my stars are starting to kind of curl up a little bit. So if your shapes start to curl up on you when you glue them, I'd like you to go back and kind of hold them down or add a little bit more glue to glue them down flat. Or I can maybe put a heavy book on there so it doesn't curl up. But this is what you're shooting for. Each one of the 12 colors on the color wheel in correct order, painted neatly, cut out neatly, and glued down evenly spaced out. You don't have two that are touching and then two that are far apart.